Story 1. Can I choose which year? I have some that I would like to forget. Story 2. Yes, living in poverty takes so many years off your life that this would probably be a net positive for me. Story 3. Do you mean I would die 1 year earlier? I would do that for 2000. Story 4. Do I have to pay it all up front? Or can I take out a loan? Story 5. Yes. If you worked your ass off for 1 year to make 250,000 and did nothing else but work to achieve this goal, it is essentially the same thing but worse. You gave a year of your life to work. A year when you were young rather than old and broken. Many people spend decades in the system, grinding to make money. Everyone is already making this trade while believing they are not. Story 6. Absolutely not. I want my entire life for myself, whether it is terrible, great, or somewhere in between. Story 7. Any working person who would not be is a dope. That is a substantially earlier retirement for me. Story 8. Yes, I will give up 6 years of my life for $1.5 million. The rest of my life could at least be pretty stress-free. Story 9. I already do this 2,080 hours per year. Story 10. Yes, of course. Why? Because the end is unknown and could happen tonight or tomorrow, but $250,000 can make a difference right now. Easy question. Let us ramp it up. Can I get $500,000 if I give 2 years? 1 million for 4 years? 2 million for 8 years? The answer will be yes on my end regardless. Story 11. If that means the last year of my life is cut off and I do not have to experience the suffering I see people in nursing homes endure, then absolutely. Story 12. Sure, I generally loathe my existence anyway. I'm fine with shaving a year off. Story 13. Can I trade more years of my life? I don't even need extra cash. I just don't see why I need to live past 70. Story 14. For me to know whether it is worth it, I would have to know how soon from now I would die. If it is 50 years from now, I might take the deal. If it is 18 months from now, definitely not. Knowing when I am going to die would be an absolute curse that is not worth $250,000. So no, I would not take that deal. Story 15. Without hesitation, I traded 10 items for $250,000 each. Story 16. Yes. Let me do it 10 times, and then I can stop working completely and pursue what I truly want. I am trading my time for money at work anyway. Story 17. Hell yeah. Being poor has probably taken 10 years off my life. I might as well get something for it. Story 18. I work 8 hours a day and earn $110,000 per year. After taxes, I take home between $75,000 and $80,000 per year. 8 hours is 1/3 of a day, and I work roughly 260 days a year, which is 72% of the year. For me to take home $250,000 would require about 3 full years of work and roughly 3/4 of a year in terms of hours worked. Yes, 100% I would do it, and the same applies to everyone who earns under $200,000 per year. Story 19. I trade every year of my life to work for far less. Story 20. I have traded a lot more for a whole lot less. What is 1 more year? Story 21. I could not care less about living into my 80s and 90s after seeing family members deteriorate and suffer. It would be easy money. Story 22. I'm middle-aged. My retirement portfolio is increasing exponentially, but my years are ticking away. $250,000 does not mean as much as time. Story 23. No, $250,000 is not enough to justify missing out on a year with my wife, children, or future grandchildren. Make it $250 million and I will be seriously considering it. Story 24. No, maybe I'm delusional, but I think at a certain point in my career I could earn more than that. Story 25. Sure. I will skip being 24 and be 25. Sounds good to me. I will never make that kind of money. Story 26. If you think about it, everyone making roughly $28.50 per hour or more is already trading a year of their life for $250,000 every 3.5 years. Story 27. Sure. I'm broke as hell, so I'll take money now that I can invest and have a better life while I'm living it. Story 28. Only if I can buy a year back as well, spend 5 years, accumulate over $1 million through investing, use the money earned to buy back time, and then keep buying time whenever I earn enough from my investments. Story 29. Yes, it would pay everything off so my children would not inherit debt. Story 30. Easiest yes ever. 1 year doesn't mean shit if I can't wipe myself anymore. If I don't live that long, at least I'll be reasonably able to retire after investing. Story 31. No, because every movie I have ever seen about making a trade that seems too good to be true means something really fucked up is going to happen. It did not say which year you would lose. It just said a year. Let's say you gave up the year, got $250,000, and then were told something terrible, like the year lost happened the moment you made the deal, which happened to be the last year of your child's life. You did not get to say goodbye. They were just gone. No, the last thing I am trading is time. Story 32. Absolutely. I am already doing it for a job that does not pay nearly that much. Story 33. I'm already in chronic pain. The years have not been kind, and I am only in my 30s. A year off at the end and a pile of money? Hell yes. Where do I sign? Story 34. Can I give away multiple years for more cash? Because I am here for a good time, not a long time. Story 35. Imagine that with just 4, you can reclaim the rest of your life. Story 36. Absolutely. The stress relief from leaving the rat race and owning a home would probably add years to my life. That amount would buy me more than I even need for a home. Story 37. Yes, it would benefit the family. Last year has probably been lame anyway. Story 38. The amount of money I could make from investments would allow me to retire much earlier if I simply saved it, but at the same time I will die 1 year earlier at an unknown time. Story 39. Yes. If it is tax-free, it will be my highest annual earnings. Story 40. Regardless of how much money I made, I would definitely not trade a year of my child's life growing up for $250,000. I had children at an older age, so I am not sure I would even trade the last year of my life for $250,000. I will consider myself extremely lucky if I see him get married, have children, and realize some of his dreams. The offer only gets worse when you consider you have to subtract a year's income from that $250,000. The ratio of time lost to additional money earned is pretty bad even for people with lower incomes. The only way this would be worth it for me is if I received an amount large enough to comfortably live off the interest alone, probably around $1.5 million. That would eliminate my need to work and allow me to spend far more time with my family for the rest of my life. Story 41. Generally speaking, yes. Specifically, do I get to choose the year? Story 42. Yes and yes. $250,000 would change my life more than a year would, and that makes me sad. Story 43. I know many people, including myself, would say yes, but I would like to know how many years you would accept this deal for if it were $250,000 per year for as many years as you wanted. After how many years would the money fail to compensate for the years and experiences you would miss out on? Story 44. Is there a trading limit? I would go up to 4 to 5 years for that millionaire status. Story 45. Do you think trading for 1 year would literally solve all my financial problems in the other years? Absolutely. Story 46. Yes, that's what jobs are, and most of us aren't making anywhere near that much for our sacrifices. Story 47. That $250,000 could buy a house, a car, and more. The stress saved from working and worrying about those debts would be well worth trading 1 year. Story 48. Most people are just as likely to add years to their life by sacrificing 1 year of income for this amount of money, provided they use it to their best advantage. Health and well-being will add years. Less stress, less pressure, and the ability to invest and so on. For me, the answer would be yes. Story 49. I traded years of my life on deployment for much less. Oops. Story 50. Yes. I would immediately begin passing it to my children. The legal gift limit over the next few years will mean more to their lives than 1 additional year with me, I assume. On the other hand, it could be instant death with no time to regret it. Story 51. No, that is about 1 year of salary for me and I would rather live. Story 52. This is a dumb hypothetical situation. Many people work for decades to save a fraction of $250,000. I would easily give up 4 years for $1 million. Obviously, the people writing this have no idea how taxes and other deductions reduce what you receive. Story 53, yes, because that's exactly the amount I have left in my mortgage. Story 54, how do I know this does not automatically kill me, since I was doomed to die within a year? If you can trade a year of your life, it presumes a world with some level of predestination. Story 55, kidding? Hell, I'll even make you a deal: buy 4 years, get 1 free. That's 5 years for a measly million. I've lived long enough. That million would allow me to take care of the few people I have in my life and maybe even a stranger or two. Story 56. Do I get to decide which year? I would trade my 56th year for $1. Story 57. That is twice what I make now, and I do nothing but work, so why not? Story 58. If you could disappear from reality for a year, I am not sure I would. There are too many variables. Our years are not wasted regardless of what we accomplish because other things happen in that time, such as personal development, relationships, family, lessons learned, and insights gained. Story 59. As long as it's the last one. That is probably going to be shitty anyway. Story 60. Sure. Statistically, if I save the money, I am likely to live several years longer. Story 61. I will trade in all of my remaining years except my last 2 at that rate. Knowing my luck, I would not even have 1 year left, so I would still be in debt. Story 62. Are these fresh years or pre-lived years? I have some pre-lived years I would let go for $125,000 for 2. Story 63. Does the offer decrease each year? Either way, I would give it 5. Story 64. It is funny that my answer would be no to the final year of my life but yes to a year in the middle, even though they are basically the same. If anything, the final one would probably be one of the worst, if not the worst. I think it is because toward the end I would be psychologically desperate for more years. Hopefully I am not just like, get me off this fucked-ass ride. Story 65. No, because I will probably make more than that in any given year. Story 66. I must live to 103, so I can see the year 2100. Why? I literally just want to see the turn of the century. Story 67. Lots of people pay $100,000 or more for that final year in assisted living facilities. Even Washington State's death with dignity law requires a doctor to say you have 6 months or less to live. It is a conundrum for sure. Story 68. I'm essentially already doing this, working as hard as I can and having no life for a higher salary. However, you still have to subtract taxes. Yes, I would. Story 69. Yes, I would trade too. The amount of stress from not having a mortgage would add more than 2 to my shitty life. Story 70. I make $300,000 per year, and my answer would be yes. Unless you are a multimillionaire, this is not that controversial a question. Laughing out loud. Story 71. Only if no one knows. It would help my wife live a better life if I die first, and once we both die it would set up the next generation. They would never forgive me if they knew about the trade, though. Story 72. Trade away means giving up a year I would have had, or doing so like the autopilot in the movie Click. Story 73. That year I will inevitably be at my oldest and least healthy. I could pay off the mortgage and live much more cheaply. Story 74. The average American yearly income is about $64,000. Yes. With that income one could save a 20% down payment for a house in less than a year, so next year I would be building equity instead of paying rent. I could pay off my low-interest car loan, saving about $2,000 over the course of the loan. I could invest the remainder so it begins generating annual income. So yes, absolutely. Assuming this reflects today's purchasing power and not a future where $250,000 is worth much less. Story 75. Yes, I would stop working for a few years. It would be a net gain. I wouldn't wait until my later years to enjoy life more. Story 76. Absolutely. Is there a limit to how many years I can buy or trade? Spending $250,000 for an extra year of life would be a bargain. Story 77. Honestly, I would trade 2 years of my life for $500,000. Story 78. What a stupid question. Most people earn substantially less than this in 1 year. Story 79. It depends on what year I am trading. Where I am from, this is a huge amount of money. Story 80. If it is 1 year shaved off the end, then yes. It would pay off my debts and give me the capital to start investing. If it is just a time jump to 1 year in the future, then no. I am not missing any of my daughter's childhood. Story 81. I've already done far more for less, so yes, I could invest some. Story 82. Sure. They can have 3rd through 8th grade if retroactive years apply. Otherwise, take my elderly, miserable shuffling years because that sucks anyway. Story 83. Absolutely. I am living a miserable life right now, paycheck to paycheck, trying to pay off debt racked up from medical bills incurred while caring for my partner who died last year. It will be years before I can be out from under this. I would gladly trade 1 year to get out from under the debt now and actually start living again. Story 84. No. I am already old, and at some point a person would pay $250,000 to gain another year of life. Story 85. Before I had kids, absolutely. Now that I have them, I want every minute I can scrape together. Story 86. Living into their 90s is common on both sides of my family, and I dread living that long. I would gladly trade a decade of old age for $250,000, since my retirement investments will likely not sustain a quality life for more than a couple of years. Story 87. I sure as hell would. Not having to waste a whole year slaving away would be nice. Story 88. If I could choose a year, I would swap 2020 for $250,000 in a heartbeat. Story 89. I really would. If I lose a year of my life for every $250,000, absolutely give me my $3 million now. Story 90. When I was 20, no question. When I was 40, maybe. Now, not a chance in hell, maybe for a few million. Then they could make my final year so great that losing a year would be worthwhile. Story 91. I would trade it for a nice, modest house in a city where I want to live. Story 92. Yes. It would take so much stress away from me and probably add a few extras. Story 93. Hell yes. I am already trying to speed run this, so I might as well get paid for it too. Story 94. Yes, but I want it to be somewhere in the middle. For example, take 60 to 61 and send it back to me. Story 95. That would fix all my current problems and probably result in my living 10 more years, so yes. Story 96. How do I even know that the year I am trading it for is not this year? Story 97. I would press that button repeatedly. Story 98. Depends. Is it one boring year or one full of Mondays? If it's all Mondays, I'll trade it in a heartbeat. Story 99. No. I have breast cancer. Every year I get to live is precious. I am still hoping it will be cured and that I will live a long life. But tomorrow is not promised to anyone. Story 100. Can I get that deal 3 or 4 times? I would certainly take one at the end at that rate. Getting 3 or 4 of them would let me actually hope to retire. Story 101. No. All but 74, so 1 year of my life might easily be 10% of it, perhaps more. Story 102. Yes, because you could do a lot with 250,000. And even if I were to die immediately after accepting, my family could use it instead. Story 103. Can I pick the year? If so, and I am left in a situation where I remember the last day of 2023 and the first day of 2024, then absolutely. Story 104. Yes. Easy. Heck, I'll trade too. If I were destined to die soon, great. It gets me off a ride I barely want to be on. Or I was going to grow old, but now I've lost a year. And now I get money that could help my family and me. Sign me up. Story 105. It depends. Do I have to perform some unpleasant task for the year in exchange for $250,000? Or is it just removed from my natural lifespan? Is everyone in the world being offered this deal or just me? Story 106. But what you miss is that year. The passing of a family member, the birth of a child. The range is huge. It's a gamble, but most would do it, I think. I'm not sure about myself, though. Story 107. I'll trade my first year and be born later. I hope the money was invested. Story 108. 1 year without having to worry about my mortgage for the next 30 years? Yes. Story 109. Is there a limit to how many times I can press that button? Story 110. If it is a year from my past, what changes could result? Everything I have done has led to this point. My child, my job, my home, my friends. Anything could change if a year disappears from the past. Story 111. If it means losing a year at the end of my natural life, I would sell 5 years. The last years are typically quite awful, in my opinion. $250,000 is almost 5 times what I make in a year before taxes and benefits take a third. Trade 5 years of hell for 25 years or more of pay. Count me in. I will sell 10 years. If it is a case where my body just gets a year older, I will sell 3 years instead. Laugh out loud. Story 112, of course. That money could do more for my kids than I would by staying here an extra year when I am old and exhausted. Story 113, yes, only one. If I put that money in the stock market, I could retire a few years earlier. It is worth the trade-off. Story 114, yes, without even a second thought. That money would make both the immediate and distant future much more enjoyable. I can hardly imagine that not being worth going without it for the next year. Story 115. Yes, I will trade 5 years for better financial security instead of living with constant fear and anxiety about the future. Rather than stressing and dealing with nonsense for the next 35 years, I can at least have peace of mind. I will give up a lot to have that. Story 116. I'll sell them the 2020 for $250,000. They can have it for $125,000 to be honest. Story 117. Exactly. I have been trading years of my life for a fraction of that. Story 118. 95% of the population work in jobs they hate to buy things they do not need to impress people they do not like. Most of them are enslaved by debt. Sounds like a much worse deal. Story 119. To be honest, I would give more if it means that my family will live a comfortable life. Story 120. Yes, they can choose any year, including the current one. Story 121. Since you never said whether it needs to be the future or not, I will happily trade in 2019. Story 122. As long as I can make sure I trade in the last year of my life and not say next year. Story 123. Can it be this year? It has been fucking shit. Story 124. No, I make good money, and I'm pretty sure I'm on borrowed time anyway. A few more summers with my friends is all I ask. Story 125. It has a decade. If it's off the end, then whatever, take my 1980s and 1970s. Story 126. That's an easier choice than deciding what to have for breakfast. I would have to work almost a decade to make that much money, so if I trade 5 years, I would never have to work again. Story 127. This is like asking, would you perform oral sex for $1,000? Yes, of course. That is like $1,000 a minute. Pointless post. Story 128. Yes. I spend half the year at sea for half that amount already. Give that to me now, and I'll buy a house and give up one of my years as an old disabled person 100%. Story 129. Assuming this is tax-free, this would mean 8 years of working for me. So obviously yes. I would probably do it 6 times to buy a house fully paid off and then reduce my working hours to half or less. I would also avoid enduring the increasingly dire state of the world for 6 years longer than necessary. Story 130. Can I take that deal multiple times? I would get $1 million in exchange for 4 years of my life, and I would be financially free, so why not? Story 131. Not a single person has asked whether you would lose the sense of the passage of time with others. Would you rather miss 1 year with your family or lose your memories? Story 132. Yes. Story 133. Wow, only 1 year? I would take it in a heartbeat. I work the night shift, so I am already making this trade anyway. Story 134. Only if it is accompanied by Christopher Guest saying, I have just sucked 1 year of your life away. Story 135. Plot twist. The year begins from the moment you sign the contract. Instant kill. Story 136. Yes, that would be a bargain. I could buy a house, pay off my car, and invest some to grow the money. It would not set me up for life, but it would be a huge leg up. Story 137. The lack of stress will probably give them back. Story 138. The money situation is getting out of hand. People are willing to trade time for paper. Story 139. In Spain, the average life expectancy for males is 81 years. I could easily trade 2 years of my life for 500,000. Story 140. Hell, I'd gladly give up more than just one. How about 10? I'll retire now and definitely have enough to last. Story 141. 30,000 a year for 8 hours of my day. 421 days a month. 120,000 if I were a robot and worked 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without breaks or weekends. Yes, I would take 250,000 for a year of my life. Story 142. No, I make more than that. For $2 million, I would give up a year because that would be almost enough for me to retire. Story 143. Brother, we already do that. Laughing my head off. Anyone doing hard labor is always trading multiples for less. Story 144. Of course not. That is not much more than my yearly salary, and I really enjoy my work. I also have children, so I have no interest in dying early. Story 145. No, because I will probably need to pay taxes on it. 1 year for the government to make more money. Haha. Story 146. You can have 10 kids. They will be fully grown adults, and I can go on a cruise and still be remotely attractive. Story 147. Yes, but only because doing so would confirm a deterministic universe and clarify the metaphysical possibilities. Story 148. With that money, I could pay off my mortgage and go on a trip every month without having to worry about the cost. I would say that would give me more actual life than another year alive. Story 149. So instead of dying around 85 to 90, I will die between 85 and 89. Those years are awful. I will give you 4 years. Story 150. Hell no. That is a lot of money, but life is far more valuable. Story 151. Assuming any other positive changes I make to my health can still lengthen my lifespan, yes, I would accept that trade and use 250,000 to improve my health and quality of life to extend it by more than 1 year. Story 152. Working in the modern world feels like selling your life for about $60,000. Many jobs are draining. They consume your energy, add long commutes, and impose overtime that is difficult to decline, which increases stress. It is awful if you do not enjoy your job. My life has been difficult for the most part, so I would gladly trade it for that amount. But things are starting to improve. I have started practicing coding again, and am working on a new project for my portfolio that could lead to a job I enjoy. I just need to plan to survive the winter. Things usually work out. I am not going to die from the cold. Story 153. I work away for half a year. Let's be honest, when I am off work, I am not really living my life either, and I earn less than 125,000 United States dollars a year after taxes. I would trade it for sure. Story 154. Most people trade far more of their lives for much less. Story 155. Yes, in a heartbeat. A year isn't much in a lifetime anyway. Story 156. What will you give me for May 2020 through April 2021? You can have that one. Story 157. You can definitely tell the age of the person who posted by their responses. Story 158. How many years can I trade? I just want 1 more year to live and to spend the rest of my money having a really good time. I'm sorry you're feeling this way. Are you thinking about suicide or do you have a plan? If you are in immediate danger, call your local emergency number now. If you are in the United States, call or text 988 for support. If you are elsewhere, please contact your local emergency services or a crisis line. If you want to talk, I can listen and help find resources. Story 159. No. Why? It was perfectly explained and I sold my life for 10,000 years a year. Why it is pointless. Story 160. Yes. I could give the money to my family and friends and get the fuck out of this sickening place faster. Story 161. Is this the end? Or will I miss a year with my family? Story 162. I'm already wasting the years of my life, so why not? I might as well give away 5 years. Maybe I'll become rich. There are only upsides. Story 163. Absolutely. I'm 49 and come from a family of long-lived people. As I understand it, that means I'll likely live a long time. Each of my grandparents lived past 90, but none of them enjoyed their final year. $250,000 at this stage of my life would allow me to retire about 5 years earlier than my current plans. I hate working for a living, so I would take that $250,000 for a one-year deal. Story 164. Can I choose the year I give away? I'll gladly give my last elderly year, when I'm already a potato. Story 165. Where do I sign up? It will help me get out of my current troubles, and I'll be able to test about half of my ideas. Story 166. Everyone here seems to view it as giving up a year for potentially much less. I can understand that to a point. But say your salary is a comfortable $75,000. Tripled. That is $225,000. Think about what you would be missing. Family time, sleep, hobbies, or whatever you enjoy developing. Your employer may not value your time, but I certainly value my free time much more. If the offer were $1 million, I would probably still say no. The lost moments with family, children, and pets are truly invaluable. So I understand why people say this. However, I feel they are not valuing what is lost during that year. Perhaps a sad sign of corrupt times. Story 167. No, for the same reason I do not use cheats in video games. I like to understand the developer's intentions. Story 168. In a heartbeat. Life is becoming increasingly uncertain. Can I do it more than once? Story 169. Yes, without a doubt. The reduction in stress from financial pressures would easily add at least 1 year to my life. Story 170. Most certainly. It would buy me a house, let me quit my job, and allow me to do whatever work I want. I would be out of the corporate world. Story 171. It is a pretty low percentage of people who actually make that amount or more, despite what you hear on the internet. Jobs paying $250,000 are not being handed out like toilet paper. Story 172. Would not trade it for $250 million. This thing is too precious. Story 173. Yes. It is 4 times what I make now. It would open a lot of doors for my partner and me. We would be able to invest the vast majority of it into a goal we have and potentially live without having to work to make ends meet. Story 174. Yes. To ensure my wife will not be homeless when I die. Story 175. I would definitely trade 2 years. Why? Because our house would be paid off, and I could die happy at any time knowing that my children would not inherit any debt. Story 176. Absolutely. The last few years probably won't be ideal anyway. If I can get money now to have a better life, it's a no-brainer. Story 177. This raises several questions. 1. Can I use this multiple times? For example, can I trade 10 years of my life and receive 2.5 million? Answer, yes. 2. Do I already have a predetermined death? If I am meant to die in 5 years and I choose to trade 10 years, would I die instantly? Or if I trade 1 year and I am meant to die within that year, would I die instantly? Or is the outcome based on a normal life expectancy for my country? Answer, possibly. 3. For example, people under 50 are expected to live far beyond today's life expectancy because of medical advances. If we live to 100 and I can trade away multiple years, I could shorten my life and die earlier so I can use the money while I am still able to enjoy it. Story 178. I am currently trading my life away for $30,000 a year. How many times can I make the deal? I will take 10. Story 179. If I get $250,000 now and the only downside is dying a year earlier, definitely yes. That's an incredibly solid salary that jumpstarts you into retiring earlier. With compound growth, depending on spending, that could mean retiring 5 or more years earlier. Well worth 1 year of later stage life. If I get $250,000 later in life at retirement, no. The money won't have time to grow. I'd rather live longer. If I get $250,000 now but skip a year of my life click style, that's a difficult choice and I'd lean toward no. Anyone with a family should probably say no. I'm single, which makes it tempting, but I'm not keen on trading a year in my early 30s for more money later. Story 180. Yes. Even if I die soon after, my family will at least have some financial help. Story 181. Yes. That's game-changing money, and I plan to live to 101 anyway. Story 182. Yes, because 1 year less to earn $250,000 can feel like 4 years of lost normal life spent pursuing that sum. Story 183. 100%. $250,000 today could change my life in ways that would extend my life 10 years beyond what my current means allow. I'm looking at you, health. Story 184. Only if I knew when I was going to go. Late 1980s and beyond, sure. Story 185. Trade 365 days to settle all debt 10 times over. I don't think any sane person would agree. You could chop it down to see where people draw the line, though. You started way too high, artificial intelligence. Story 186. It depends on the year. If it is 20 years or more down the line, then absolutely. If it is the current year, I will forget I have 250,000. Story 187. Could we trade a year of our lives each to get $500,000? What is the point of living apart if we are only hoping to die together a year earlier, when $500,000 is my calculated threshold for us as a couple to never have to work again? Story 188. Stress can take anywhere from 1 to 10 years off your life. I will take the cash, reduce my stress, and live longer. Story 189. Why not? The way things are going, I'm not sure I'm going to have a great year anyway. If I could have one good year, I'd be happy. Laugh out loud. Story 190. If I had it, I would pay $1 million for one more second, so no. Story 191. How is it different from slogging in survival jobs with zero work-life balance? Story 192. No, but I am blessed and money is not an issue. To be honest, even if I made $60,000 a year, I do not think I would do this. Every day is precious. Story 193. God, yes. I do not want to be here that long. That would fix all my immediately fixable problems. It would clear my debts, let me live on it for a long time while I focus on my health, and leave the rest in the bank as a safety net. Story 194. Are we talking about a year being randomly removed from the middle of your life, or that you die 1 year earlier? I would gladly trade a year of not being able to urinate without assistance for $250,000. Story 195. Yes, we are currently trying to figure out how to afford dinner, but we just found out a debit card has been used by someone in California, so we have no money for the next few days. I do not want to be alive. I would trade 5 years for $1 million. I am sorry you are feeling this way. Are you safe right now? If you are in immediate danger, please call your local emergency number or go to the nearest emergency room. If you are in the United States, you can call or text 988 for the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. If you are elsewhere, tell me your country or region and I can help find local crisis resources or numbers. Story 196. Hell yes. That's life-changing money for me and would vastly improve the remaining years for my wife, our future children, and me. It would pay off our current mortgage and debts, and the rest would be a down payment on a new home if we chose to keep our existing house. We could rent the current house and pay the new mortgage down faster, or we could sell the house and perhaps have enough to custom build a new home instead. Story 197. Receiving this much money upfront will make your life easier. Story 198. I already trade more of my time for less money at my job. This would just be a pay raise and would mean not having to suffer through the hours. Story 199. 250,000 per year. Do you mean a standard American calendar year or a more flexible time frame? Story 200. Yes. You already sell much of your life for your wages. Getting cash sooner would not hurt. Story 201. Yes. I'm disabled. I have 12 different diagnoses. I have had 14 surgeries, countless procedures, and a pulmonary embolism. I currently have stage 1 cancer. Story 202. It depends on how this is administered. If the lost year starts now, my answer is no. Missing a year would be far more financially devastating than $250,000 could compensate. If the lost year is at the end, I will take the money. I would rather retire sooner and live my life on my terms. Story 203. Do I get to pick the year? There have been a few real stinkers so far. Story 204. No, because we do not know exactly which year of my life I would be trading. Maybe that year would be the very best year of my life, and it would never have really happened. Story 205. Living a year less? Or a bad move like Shrek 4? Story 206. In a second. For the best reasons, love. I would take 3 and use the rest for others so they can be happy. Story 207. Probably not. If you plan it right, you will be fine by retirement age and will not have to worry much about money, so I would decline. Story 208. Yes. If your salary is lower than that, it is probably worth it. Mine is 10 times lower, so it is easily worth it. Story 209. It depends on how long I get to live. One more year at 80 is not as important as one more year at 30. But I think I would do it regardless at this point. Times are hard. Story 210. Sure. I would get it back with less work. Therefore, I would actually live longer. Where do I apply? Story 211. Can someone just give me my life expectancy and offer this deal for the whole thing? I guess trading it means spending the time in a coma. This sounds like a hell of a deal, honestly. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.